Welcome to the Word for 2022. Today we're in 1 Kings chapter 10. God has blessed Solomon with wisdom and understanding. His fame spread far and wide. As we begin this chapter, we read in verse 1 that the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relation to the name of the Lord. She came to test him with hard questions, it says. If you could talk to Solomon, what questions would you ask? I came across a list of things that are kind of puzzling. Questions like, why do dogs not like it when you blow in their face, but they love to stick their head out the window of a moving car? Or, why is the third hand on a watch called a second hand? Also, why is it that rain drops but snow falls? And why do they call it lipstick if your lips still can move? Well, those are some of life's riddles. But what about the queen? It says that she asked hard questions. We don't know what she asked, but maybe she asked questions like, why does God allow suffering? Or what does God really want for my life? Or why do bad things happen to seemingly good people? Why does God allow evil? Or what happens when you die? Then we read in verse 3 that Solomon answered all of her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. The queen, when she first heard about the king's wisdom and all of his achievements, she said, I didn't believe it. I have to see it for myself. But then she said, indeed, not the half was told to me. In wisdom and wealth, you have far exceeded what I have heard. God had blessed Solomon greatly, but he also gave Solomon a warning, as we read yesterday in 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 6. The problem was that Solomon did not heed God's warning. God had said earlier in Scripture that the king should not acquire for himself many horses. The king should not take many wives or foreign wives. And the king should not acquire large quantities of silver and gold for himself. Again, Solomon, he disobeyed all that God had said. He had tens of thousands of horses for himself. He had 1,000 women, 700 wives, and 300 concubines. He also was the richest king in the world. We read that in this chapter in verse 23. Solomon disobeyed God on every command that he had given. We even read in verse 14 that the weight of gold that Solomon received every year was 666 talents. 666. Whenever we see that number, our minds immediately go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. That number is the number of evil. That is the number of the beast. Solomon, despite starting out so well, he was given wisdom and blessing, favor and honor. He was God-focused. He started off so well, but because of disobedience, his heart was turned. And he even introduced pagan worship into Israel, even the worship of Moloch. Moloch was worshipped through child sacrifice. Solomon allowed that in to Israel. Solomon allowed temptation and disobedience to ruin his own life and to destroy the nation of Israel. The Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 11 and 12, these things happened as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So, if you think that you are standing firm, be careful that you do not fall. Solomon fell because of disobedience. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, Solomon wrote, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. He also wrote in Proverbs 11:2, when pride comes, then comes shame. Because of pride and arrogance, Solomon disobeyed God's command and he paid a heavy price. Blessing always comes through obedience, but disobedience, it leads to disaster. Lessons to learn from Solomon's life. Thank you for joining the Word for 2022.